Hello and welcome to a special edition of the OCVarsity Gridiron Show. I'm freelance video journalist Jonathan Khamis, being joined by Dan Albano and Steve Fryer. We're just talking about Mission Viejo in this episode. They have to give up 4 wins this season, guys, and those games were Santa Margarita, La Habra, Villa Park, and Liberty of Bakersfield. The Diablos' record is now 4-4. All those teams I mentioned will pick up wins via forfeit. Steve, you had this story up on OCVarsity yesterday. It's Tuesday morning. What's the latest?
No changes really. You know, Mission Viejo discovered an irregularity on some paperwork on one of their football players there, and he was ineligible for the 4 games in which he participated, and so therefore it doesn't matter if the guy is like a starting quarterback or a guy just plays on kickoff returns. If you played in the game, you got to forfeit it. Mission Viejo discovered the irregularity in their administration and turned themselves in, just like Modern Day, where we're at right now, did some weeks ago when they found that one of their guys shouldn't have been playing because there were some irregularities again in the paperwork, and they self-reported CIF and say, hey, we got a problem here, forfeit the games. The long-term thing about this is what this does to Mission Viejo going forward. They still retain their 2 league wins, which is very essential because you have to finish the top 2 teams in that 5-team South Coast League to be guaranteed entry into the playoffs, and so that should be okay. I think their schedule sets up they probably will be league champions. I think they're that good, and if they're the league champion, they'll still receive a first-round home game. Their record won't be 10-0; it'll be more like 6-4, something like that. But I think the seating committee looks at that. They know that Mission Viejo is really good. They'll still be really high in the polls. We've seen that with the Division I polls. Mission Viejo's Modern Day's forfeit to Bishop Amat had no effect on the polls. And the CIF seating committee really looks at those polls and they determine the top 4 seeds. I don't think it's going to affect Mission Viejo's standing either in league nor in the CIF Southern Section football playoffs.
So knowing what Steve said, Dan, is that fair?
Well, I don't completely agree with Mr. Fryer. But going back to your question, is it fair? I mean, this is another reminder. It's high school sports. These are life lessons for these young men. Is it fair for some of these clerical error to cost 4 games?
But does it end up mattering?
It's probably not fair, but that life isn't fair, and that's one of the things the high school kids are learning right now. But I think it will matter because I think the big difference is that when this happened to Modern Day, it was the first game of the year. It was very early, and they got to flip the script and write and show everybody how good they are. This is happening going into week 8. Diablos are on the bye. And they have teams that are competing in the ultra-competitive Division I to get as best seed as they can. So I feel like some of the teams that they're, jockeying against, it could hurt them. And we'll see if the Diablos, I think they're 5th in Division I right now. We'll see if they stick that, because, they gave up a loss to Santa Margarita, who's fighting to get into the playoff bracket. Jay Sarah's trying to get their resume as best as possible, and they're going to try to pass the Diablo. So I think it could potentially be damaging once they get into the room where coaches are, and people are going to argue and then say, hey, we don't have forfeits, we don't have losses. This is how we played. We've done everything right, and why penalize us? So I think it's going to be pretty contentious, and I think it's something the Diablos. I expect it to be definitely to be an issue.
We'll see when the bracket comes out.
Yeah, first-year head coach Chad Johnson went on Twitter and took the blame to himself.
Yeah,
he took full blame for this incident. You kind of like to see that out of a leader and a new head coach.
Sure. It's pretty cool, but it's an admin mistake.
Yeah. So I guess that's all we have to say about it right now, guys.
Mistake. Somebody made an error, and and to Dan's point, which is really well said, is that when you've got a bunch of senior players who did everything right, and then one thing screws up, and it's all those kids who did everything right. Now the chance to go 10-0 and all that stuff is out the window. So my heart goes out to all those kids who've been working hard all summer, all spring, all fall. To hopefully go 10-0, and they're the ones who kind of get penalized in this thing. But I don't know if there's a better way to do it. Do you just penalize the kid, but maybe the kid didn't mess up, maybe admin messed up. I don't know. But it's really hard to assess where the penalty goes, and whether it's a guy who just plays on a couple kickoff return plays or a guy who's a star player. It's in the blue book, the CIF Constitution. It doesn't matter what the guy does. you got to forfeit those games in which you participate. It's a tough one.
And I don't know if this is, if you want to call it an epidemic or what. This has happened to 3 Orange County schools this year. We mentioned Mater Dei. It's also happened to Laguna Hills, and I believe a couple in Los Angeles.
Yeah, Trabuco Hills forfeited a game this year as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, to finish it off, Dan, is this something that schools need to be more aware of and just really, it's hard, but I don't know, you know, some of these kids, you really got to look at their paperwork. Is it just as clear as that?
You know, as all the gray hairs that I increasingly get over the years will remind me.
You're a silver fox, Dan.
Yeah.
Stop it.
This has happened for years, and you know, it's high school sports, and it's you know, it's. You know, there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of kids running around. There's transfers. And when I say high school sport, it's also there's transition of staff and athletic directors, and you know, but even the most seasoned coaches you know, Bob Johnson forfeited games at Mission Viejo before. It's happened. It will continue to happen because it's a big job for high schools. You know, administrations and athletic departments to keep track of all this stuff, and it's with all the movement around today. So I think it's going to continue. It's happened before. It'll continue.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you to Dan. Thank you to Steve. I'm Jonathan Khamis, and for all the latest on this story, make sure to check out OC Varsity in the Orange County Register High School Sports section. Thank you for watching.